I was impressed. I know
All right, hopefully I'm live. Hey, yeah, really well written. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hey, David, can you give a quick glance and see if I'm like, am I like framed and?
You even got a tan.
I got a tan?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh man. All right. Hey, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to try and keep us more or less on track so that I look good on my video here. So welcome everybody to our second class. Nice to see you all. We're missing two, we know. And then where's Matthew?
Oh.
Matthew. Is it Matthew?
Mm-hmm.
Matthew.
Metzger.
Mm-hmm. I learned that was Metzger as in of the Metzger here. Dave.
Right.
His son. Yes. I did not know that. So we have a new student to welcome.
Raya.
Who are you?
I'm Raya.
Hi, Raya. Nice to see you. Does everybody know Raya?
Yes.
Say something about yourself. Everybody, we all know.
Like what?
Like, hi, I'm Raya. And
Hi, I'm Raya.
and what did we share last time?
She went to a traveling thing last night.
Traveling.
I went to a traveling learner's
Oh yeah.
meetup
How was
last
that?
night. It was really cool. Yeah.
Was it?
There were a lot of cool people there.
Yeah,
Been to
travelers?
A lot
Jaden was
more
there.
countries than I have been.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Jaden was there too.
I always thought it would be a cool project to.
You know Ashton.
Yeah. I always thought it'd be a cool project to, go on Google Earth and put pins everywhere you've been. But that's neither here nor there. So welcome, Raya. Good to see you here. We are in the class Designing Your Biblical Life. So hopefully that's the right class for you. We are going to explore the purpose of life today. So our objective is threefold, I think. Number one is just a quick review of where we were last time, and then there was a video that I had wanted to watch last time, and I think I'm going to try and have us watch today because it gives us a broad perspective of the book in about 9 minutes, and I think that'll be useful for us to carry along as we go forward and look forward to diving in deep on each of the key things that they talk about. So we're going to do a brief review. We're going to watch that video. Then we're going to spend quite a bit of time exploring the purpose of life. And we're going to look to primarily Scripture to try to get some basis for why we might think the purpose of life is a certain thing versus another certain thing. And then the third thing we're going to do is hopefully you did your assignment to some degree or another, but be thinking about the key thing that I would like to ask us to share is describe a pivotal point, a milestone in your life that you think was kind of pretty instrumental on the path that you currently find yourself on. And just think about that pivotal point, and it can be a pivotal point that was designed by you specifically. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this versus that. It could be something that just happened. And it could be something that resulted in a positive thing forward or a negative thing forward. Just something that was instrumental in your life. So I just want to go through each of us and share some of those thoughts. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So quick review that includes a video that I think will be useful. Talk about the purpose of life. And that's a pretty daunting task to determine what the purpose of life is in like 45 minutes. So quick review for those of us who weren't here. Get my cool magic wand going. Oh no. My magic wand is dead. How am I going to operate without my magic wand?
You know all the fears you had before class?
Yeah.
They unfold.
They unfold before my very eyes. I can't use my magic wand. Oh, you know what? Thankfully, oh, I'm an engineer, so I can fix things. Watch this. Woohoo! Check me out. Check me out.
That is a
That's one
master.
of the reasons why I married him.
I know. You guys are probably all too young to know what MacGyver means, right? Look at that. Woohoo! I fixed that in 10 seconds flat. Okay, so review. Why are we here? We're designing our biblical life. Okay, we're discovering what God wants me to do with the rest of my life. So instead of asking, what do we want to be when we grow up? We are asking, what does God want me to do with the rest of my life? And this is a question that we can ask at any stage of our life because we're always living, right? We're always moving from point A to point B. We want to discover how He's equipped me to do the things that He wants me to do. And we're discovering that He not only has purposes and good works for me, but what those are. And that's going to be a critical thing. To simply come to the acknowledgement that God actually has purposes in mind for us. We're not just living in a ambiguous, open-ended thing. He has purposes, and I think part of our role as Christians in our Christian walk is discovering what those things are. And part of that has to do with how He's equipped us, how He's given us certain desires and wants, how He's put us into certain places at certain times in certain relationships. And those all result in the overall design for our life. Now, in my theology, God already knows the path that we're going to take. Okay, so He knows the beginning of the end, so it's not a mystery to Him what our path is going to be. But to us, on this side of His view, we don't know. And so we have the freedom to, within the bounds that He gives us, to make decisions that end up creating that path. So for us, we get to do a lot of design work, and I think we're called to do that. Part of the process is really discovering how to discover. So a lot of what we're going to be acquiring are tools, methods that have been co-opted, have been grabbed from product design, that is designing products that work really well with human beings, like this cool laptop that works so, and this cool pointer that's like so ergonomic, it's like all the buttons are just right, and you know, it's lightweight and well balanced. And so this is, and plus it's kind of nice looking, it's got like some, you know, angled wedge design, kind of gives it a flair. That is a product that works well with human beings, but take that same design thinking process and apply it to designing lives that work really well with human beings. That's part of the discovery process. And then really discovering how to start where you are, right? So I think next class is going to be starting to map out where are we? Where are we right now? Where are we starting from? We want to know where we're going. We want to have a purpose. We want to design where we're going, but we got to know where we are now. So that's kind of a grand overview, with really the main goal for this class is to all of us to gain confidence and clarity about the next steps of your life as you live out your walk with the Lord. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do during this class. That's all review. So let's go ahead and watch this video. It's about 9 minutes long, and it is kind of a sort of a book report of this book, and it's more slanted towards the design of my career part of my life. So careers are a big part of our lives, but it's hardly the whole thing. This particular video is more focused on sort of the does the Lord want me to do with my career, and it's from a secular standpoint, but the principles behind it, the review, will be very relevant for our entire lives and for how we map this onto a biblical perspective. Okay, so let me try that. And you guys tell me if it starts getting hot in here, because it feels hot to me right here. And so feel free to open windows. I think they just slide. So
Turn the light
We can turn the lights off too, and that'll give us the illusion of cooling down, but it won't really. And I'm tethered, so. See how well this works? It's a communication tool. I did this, and Peter just naturally knew because of the excellent design what I was. Those are for the break.
Oh, okay.
So those are there to like look you for. This is like a reward for the break. Yes, to distract you. Okay, so here we go.
I recently read the book Designing Your Life by authors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Burnett and Evans teach a class at Stanford to help people find their dream job. Most students attend their class because they feel utterly lost or miserable in their current career. One student named Janine was a successful lawyer in her mid-30s who had everything she had wanted. She got a college degree, her law degree, she had a good marriage, and a career at a top law firm doing important and influential work. But after driving home from the law firm, she would often sit out on her deck at night and cry. She had the life that she once wanted, so why wasn't she happy? Another student named Elise decided to quit her job several years ago and fulfill her dream of opening an Italian deli with a small cafe inside, just like the ones you see in Tuscany. She rented a building, renovated it, stocked it with the best Italian food, and then opened it to the public. It was a huge success. Her business was making money, and her dream had become a reality. But Elise was miserable. She hated the day-to-day experience of managing staff, tracking inventory, and doing all the little things that were needed to keep the business running. These two ladies aren't alone. In the United States, surveys show that 2/3 of workers are unhappy with their jobs, and 50% actually hate their work. How can so many people end up in a career they despise? And how can you and I avoid that same fate? The first way to avoid getting stuck in a career you hate is to challenge the dysfunctional belief that you and I have just one calling in life, one passion that, if we don't follow, we'll end up miserable and full of regret. The truth is, there are several different paths that you could take from this point forward that all lead to a satisfying and fulfilling life. Once you start seeing and designing a few promising lives that you could live, you need to dip your toes into each of those lives to sample what it could be like before you dive in. The most important principle of designing your life is that you don't really know what you want until you experience it. So you and I need to find a way to simulate experiences before we make a commitment. To help you discover at least 3 possibilities of good lives that you could live over the next 5 years, imagine walking into a movie theater and watching these 3 movies. The first movie is called Your Optimized Life. In this life, you redesign your current career so that you spend more time doing tasks that engage and energize you and less time doing tasks that make you feel disengaged and exhausted. In the book, there's a civil engineer named Michael. Michael hated his job and he wanted to change. His family recommended that he get an MBA and go into finance. But authors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans recommend that Michael reflect on his day and find times when he was excited, focused, and having a good time at work, and write down exactly what he was doing during those times. In the book, the authors write, Michael realized that he loved his job as a civil engineer when he was working on complex and difficult engineering problems. The times that drained him and made him miserable were those when he was dealing with difficult personalities and performing other administrative tasks that had nothing to do with the intricate task of engineering. By simply discovering when he was enjoying himself at work and what caused his energies to rise and fall, Michael discovered that he had actually enjoyed civil engineering. It was the people stuff, the proposal writing, and the fee negotiations that he hated. He just had to find a way to craft his job so that he was doing more of what he loved and less of what he hated. Instead of business school, which would probably have been a disaster, and an expensive one at that, Michael decided to double down on engineering. He ended up entering a PhD program and is now a high-level civil and structural engineer who spends his time, mostly alone, working on the kind of complex engineering problems that make him really happy. And he's become so technically valuable that no one asks him to do the administrative stuff anymore. On good days, he goes home with more energy than when he left for work in the morning, and that's a pretty good way to work. Like Michael, you need to realize that there are times during your day, even days that you hate, when you're excited and focused and having a good time. To capture these moments, start what the authors call a good time journal. At the end of every day for the next 3 weeks, write down the times during the day you were completely immersed in what you were doing and felt energized afterwards. Try to get as specific as possible. Use the AEIOU technique. What activities were you doing? What environment were you in? Who were you or were you not interacting with? What objects were you using? And what users were you helping? As in, was there a specific person you were doing work for? If you complete your good time journal at the end of every day for the next 3 weeks, you'll start to see a consistent pattern of activities that engage you and energize you. Now imagine a life over the next 5 years where you find a way to do more of what engages you, like Michael did. Take out a piece of paper and draw out 5 boxes representing the next 5 years. Do simple sketches with stickmen and basic objects and keywords to illustrate what those 5 years might look like. Now you walk into the second movie theater and watch your second life unfold. This is the alternate life. It's the life that you would have if your current career just vanished. Either AI took over and your work was being done by robots for much cheaper, or the market suddenly disappeared overnight. What industry would you try to transfer your skills to and do work that engages and energizes you? If you're an author and write novels for a living, imagine that suddenly everyone stopped reading novels and there was no way to make money writing novels anymore. What would you do? Again, use the items in your good time journal to create a 5-year sketch of life number 2. Now, walk into the third movie theater and see your third life unfold over the next 5 years. In this life, what I'll call your fascinated life, you see yourself doing the thing you'd want to do if money and image were no object. A few years ago, I suspended my fear of judgment and the fear of not making money right away and decided to sketch out what my life could look like if I did what fascinated me. That exercise led me into the life I'm in today, the life of an online teacher and content creator. If I hadn't looked beyond the fear of judgment and the fear of not making money, I would have missed out on a life that is deeply fulfilling. So what would you love to try if money and image were no object, and you were guaranteed to succeed and make a good living doing what fascinates you? Again, take out a piece of paper, draw 5 boxes, and sketch out what this life might look like over the next 5 years. At this point, you might see a life that you really want to pursue. You may feel like committing to a life and going all in, but that would be a big mistake. Elise, the deli cafe store owner, dangerously assumed that she would enjoy the day-to-day experience of running her store. She wound up a miserable store owner because she committed before testing her assumption. Elise should have conducted what the authors call prototype conversations. Prototype conversations are conversations with people who are living the life that you want to live. During a prototype conversation, you ask the person across from you about their life story and get them to relive their experiences. As they are reliving their experiences, you get a sample of what their life is like. This sampling will help verify and validate your life designs. For Elise, she could have walked into a deli in another city and asked the deli manager if she could buy her a coffee and learn about her experiences running the deli. After talking to 3 satisfied and 3 dissatisfied deli cafe store owners, she would have had a clear idea of what was involved in running a store and realized that she wasn't really up for it. To start a prototype conversation, simply search your extended network on LinkedIn and look for people who are living lives that you want to live. Then reach out to them and ask them if they would be willing to share their story with you over a quick Skype call or a coffee nearby. The information you can learn in one prototype conversation can save you years of misery working in a career you shouldn't have pursued. So if you feel stuck in your career and you want to make a career shift, start by sketching out 3 lives that you could live over the next 5 years. Build these lives around the critical few things that engage you and energize you at work. Then conduct prototype conversations to test questions and assumptions inherent in each of those lives. If you follow these steps, you have a much better chance of defining and pursuing a career that you'll actually love, rather than a career you'll think you'll love, but end up hating. That was the core message that I gathered from Designing Your Life by Dave Evans and Bill Burnett. This is a great guide for finding a career you love. I highly recommend it. If you would like a 1-page PDF summary of insights that I gathered from this book, just click the link below and I'd be happy to email it to you. If you've already subscribed to the free Productivity Game email newsletter, this PDF is sitting in your inbox. If you like this video, please share it. And as always, thanks for watching and have yourself a productive week.
Okay, so that short little video kind of covered a lot of the things that we're going to be diving in deeper and actually doing during this class. And some of them may seem corny, and as you look at the workbook, so don't forget you need this workbook, and this is where you're going to do all of this work, and it's nicely set up for you to be able to enter in. And as I go through the class and talk about in more detail the various steps along the way, you'll see that there are places to actually do these exercises. And again, I hope that video inspired you to think that there may be a lot more options than you're considering, and those options can be take what you're currently doing and make it better. Think about something completely, different. If you weren't doing this, what else would you do? And as you especially do what they call the good time journal and start realizing this clump of things that really energize you and motivate you and inspire you, those are the types of things that tend to match with your giftings and with how God has designed you. You may find that there's another picture out there that may fit those giftings a lot better than what you're currently pursuing. And then the last one is the completely out of the box one. And I've been surprised when I've researched for this class how many people who have gone through the book and the exercises actually have landed on that really out of the box thing, and that's been the one that they've run with. So mapping out who you are, discovering more about what really energizes you and what doesn't, what brings you down, will help define what will lead to a well-designed life. Understanding how God has made you, mapping out these multiple visions, multiple ways that your life could go. And then the last thing he said is before you dive in, you got to dip your toes in the water. And that's a huge mistake that oftentimes we don't make. We have this idea of what we think we ought to do. And so we dive full bore in, we get the big college loan, we start taking the classes, we invest years of our lives only to find later that, like the examples they gave, even success. I mean, notice those two examples of the ladies who pursued their law degree and pursued the deli thing. Their plan was a success. I mean, they accomplished what they had set out to do. The problem is that end goal was not what really they wanted. And so that's a terrible thing to come to say, I did everything right, I invested everything in, now I've gotten success, but I'm unhappy. And it usually is because that end goal is really not what brings you fulfillment, what brings you purpose and lasting satisfaction. And that's one of the things we really want to try to avoid is putting a bunch of effort into something that, even if it's successful, isn't going to be really what you want. So that's why it's important to actually do the work that will help draw out the truth about what you really are designed like from God's perspective. Okay, so success in this class means this, that at the end of the class we'll be better able to answer where you want to go next. In other words, you've thought carefully through the options you have, you've thought carefully about really what brings you a sense of meaning and fulfillment and purpose, how God has uniquely designed you, how it fits into His biblical plan. So you now know where you want to go next, why you want to go there. You can clearly articulate, these are the reasons why this seems like the best thing for me at the moment, and then how you're going to get started down that path. And so you'll have these tools that will continue your lifelong process of designing your life, because it doesn't just stop here. And a lot of what happens is that as you move along, part of most likely emerging from this class, probably the first action you're going to do is more prototyping. Okay, so you're still going to be prototyping, that is testing the waters in a variety of different ways to figure out, is this really the right path? Are my assumptions about it right? Before I invest a lot more time into it and money, etc. So that's what success looks like for this class. So now briefly I want to cover what I thought were the key points in chapter 1. Sorry, this wasn't chapter 1. I take that back. The introduction, that's what I meant. So the introduction, the key points. Number 1, life should be well designed. Life is a precious gift that we've been given, and we need to steward it well. And in order to steward it well, we should design it well. And we have the capability of doing that, so let's do that. To do that, let's think like a designer. So a lot of what we're learning is learning how to think like a designer and employ these tools that allow us to come up with a good design for our lives, just like a product designer designs products for people. So what does that mean? There's 5 key things about thinking like a designer. One is be curious, and that means be curious about what your life could look like. Be curious about how God has made you. Be curious about what God says is the overall purpose of life. Be curious about how your giftings reflect back into that overall purpose. Be curious about the options that you may have. Try stuff. Okay, one of the things that you'll find in design thinking is this thing they call a bias to action. In other words, they kind of frame it well. The difference between an engineer and a designer, and I've never quite understood this, but it's come clear to me the way they say it. The difference between an engineer and a designer is that an engineer thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks until he's got it, or she thinks they have it all figured out. Okay, we've got it all figured out. Now I'm going to go build the thing. Okay, and so most of the time is thinking and doing equations and whatever, and then once it's all mapped out, then they go and build it. Okay, a designer does it pretty much the other way around. They start building. They say, let's just try something. And, oh, that didn't work. But look, we learned from that first try, and that first try guides the next try, and the next try, and you quickly hone in on a solution that you may never have arrived at just by sitting around thinking. Now, I'm an engineer, so I kind of like, wait a sec. But it's really true, and I reflect back on the times of my greatest success being an engineer, and it was much more in terms of being a designer than it was being an engineer. I was trying things, and the part of my job that I liked the most was coming up with new ways to use technology in ways that were really cool but nobody had ever done, and then figuring out, like cobbling things together to try out the idea and see if it would work. And the more I thought like a designer by trying things out and learning from how they failed, I found it was a much better process to land on a good design than just sitting at my desk trying to figure it out on paper before I actually moved to action. So trying stuff in terms of life design is, in their terminology, prototyping. You saw the picture, dipping your toes in the water before you commit. So in the example, the lady who started the deli, she shouldn't have just gone headlong into buying the building and doing the whole thing. She should have found a deli that was exactly what she wanted to do and got a job there. And she should have worked there for 6 months and seen what it was really like before she invested all of that time and money into the actual thing, only to find out that even when it was successful, she was miserable because the work, the tasks were not really what she wanted. So try it out before you buy. Okay? Try stuff. Next thing is reframe problems. So we'll get into that in the next chapter about reframing problems. And this is really critical because it has to do with looking at things. For me, I'm a natural born optimist. And it has to do with looking at the glass half full rather than half empty. And reframing problems in such a way when you see them half full, you start seeing solutions through the problems that you might otherwise not see. Another thing that is part of reframing problems is reframing failure. Okay, too often we let failure stop us. And failure should always be a learning experience that shows you that removes certain options. It says, okay, that didn't work, so now you've learned a tremendous amount. Don't do it that way. Okay, it doesn't mean that you stop. It means that you don't do it that way. So now try a different way to do it. And if you fail there, then try a different way. And that whole process starts leading you into the actual solution. And so many, I think a great example of this in action was, has anybody heard the story of Thomas Edison? What's Thomas Edison, and Joey knows it, so she can't say it. So what was Thomas Edison most famous for? He was famous for many things. The light bulb, okay. So what was his story in the light bulb?
He went through like 1,000 or something.
There you go.
Prototype.
Yes, he had 1,000 failures. What he was trying to do, and this is a little bonus since I'm an engineer. So what he was trying to do is find that perfect material that he could be like a wire. He could run electricity through the material, and it would basically burn brightly but not burn out. Okay, that was the whole thing. How do I get this thing to basically burn without burning up? And he thought it's got to be possible. And this was whenever 1800s. He went through, like Toby said, 1,000 different things before he finally landed on. He used a charred piece of thread. It was like carbonized thread, and that was finally the thing that would, when you ran electric current through it, it would glow brightly and burn without burning up. And so that was the key. And once he started narrowing in into what actually worked, he started understanding the principle behind it and understanding why things were burning up, so he was able to quickly refine that. But if he had given up after 990, right, we wouldn't have the light bulb, or somebody else would have invented it. Yeah, somebody else would have invented it. So reframing problems, especially reframing failure. Every one of us has experienced failure, and what we want to learn in this design process is that failure doesn't mean stop in your tracks, and actually you can use it to grow and know what not to do, which is important as you try to discover what to do. Okay? So know that it's a process. So again, related to the failure thing, or related to trying stuff, related to being curious, this takes iteration. You try stuff, you fail, you be curious, and it's a process that's an ongoing thing in our lives because circumstances are always changing. Life is dynamic, right? Life is not static. When it gets too static, it gets boring. So if we just sit here, life can be boring, unproductive. What we want is a dynamic life, not too dynamic, right? We want the right balance of stability, forward progress, but flexibility to adapt as things change. We adapt to changing economic situations, changing interests. I think as people, we grow interested in new things as life goes on. That's really great. Let's integrate that into a dynamic and fulfilling, well-designed life. Okay? And last, ask for help. Okay? Asking for help, relying on the experience of other people who have been down similar paths before, can be so invaluable. A lot of prototyping, and we're going to do this in this class, so get ready for it, is going to be asking for help. So one of the exercises we're going to do is in an area that's in one of your life designs that's outside of what you're currently doing, you're going to find somebody who's kind of doing that as close as you can get. And it's going to be way easier than you think. And then you're going to go talk to them because you're going to have coffee or you're going to have a phone call or whatever. And let me encourage you in this because people love to share what they're excited about. So there's no problem. You know, if you find the right person who's excited about what they're doing, they love to talk about it. And so if you call them up and say, hey, I'm really interested in, you know, whatever. You're exploring the biology of the lampreys that live at Willamette Falls. And I'm interested in that too. Can you tell me how you got interested in that? What do you do? And what kind of things could somebody like me do in that field? And you'd be amazed, you know, that they'll be willing to talk to you, willing to have coffee, willing to have a half an hour conversation, and you'll be amazed at what you learn. So it will be an exercise for you to learn the process of asking for help. Okay, so those are some of the key points. Design is a process. So I'm going to do my best to communicate the basis for the design process that these guys have developed. I'm going to do my best to map that into a biblical framework, but really only you can design your life. So I'm not going to design your life for you. I'm going to teach you the process that you can use. So that gets back to, oh, you know, what do we got to do for homework? Oh, you know, what's due when? You know, it's not about the right or wrong answers to the exercises, and I'm not calling it homework. It's exercises that you do. It's about using those exercises to discover the things that you'll need to do a good job of designing your life. Okay, so so let me transition now. Well, before we do that, any questions on the introduction to the book or these key points that I picked up on? Any questions on those? Okay, so I'm going to transition now for the next couple minutes to talk about kind of before we even get started on the design process. There's a really big thing we need to confront, and that is design is aimed at a purpose, right? When you're designing something, you're designing it for some purpose. When you're designing a watch, you're designing it to tell time, okay? And unless you have that purpose in mind, what is your design going to do? You can't just do design absent a purpose. So the question that we confront immediately out the gate is, what purpose is our life design that we're trying to develop? What is it aimed at? What is our purpose? Okay, so as I promised, I want to try this. I'm prototyping this, but every class I'm going to try to come with a song that, for one reason or another, kind of captures some ideas behind the subject matter that we're going to cover.
What was the name of the last one?
The name of the last one was Once in a Lifetime by the Talking Heads. speaking of which, just procedurally, a couple things. One is use Populi. Don't use the app that comes on the phone. It does work, but it's limited functionality. You'll find you get frustrated because you can't do certain things on the app. So use Populi, log on. If you don't know how to log on, send me a text or an email. I'm happy to help you through it. It's brand new for CBC, so give it a little grace. Not everything might work. So use Populi. I am posting every one of these presentations there, so you can go back and just pull up the presentation, and it's all online. You can go, I think you can watch the videos that I'm showing. In any case, I'm trying to, if I have a video, I put the URL to the video in the presentation, so worst comes to worst, you copy and paste that into your browser. So this stuff is there. Then the last thing I'll say about Populi is it would be great if you posted your anything that is like a written thing, which there won't be too many of during this class, but anything that's like a written thing, like you did for last week that we're going to talk about today, if you just post that to Populi. And we don't know how to do that yet, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. So next time I will let you know how to do that. So, because I don't know how to do it either, but I know it's possible. Okay? Gabe's laughing because he said, I did it. I figured it all out. But don't fret about it now. It's not that big a deal. Okay, so let's watch this video. And it's not a perfect match, but it's the video, it's the song that came to mind.
If I post my homework on it, is that only to you, or everyone has access to
No,
it?
it's only to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
No. No, it won't be public.
Okay.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
By the
Good
way,
point.
You know who else put this on his website?
Who?
Ravi Zacharias.
Really?
Yeah. He loves
Wow. Hey, I'm in the big league. If Ravi did it and I did it, we are on the same wavelength. That is so cool. So, yeah, don't fret too much about the posting, the homework, and all that stuff. Most of the work you're going to be doing is in your notebook. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. I'll be more curious to see, are you doing it? If you want credit for the class, do it. If you don't want credit for the class, do it anyway, because otherwise you won't have anything to work with. That's the whole point of the class. All right, so here we go. The Moody Blues.
Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door with 1,000 million questions about hate and death and war? When we stop and look around us, there is nothing that we need in a world of persecution that is burning in its greed. Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door? Because the truth is hard to swallow. That's what the war of love is for. It's not the way that you say it when you do those things to me. It's more the way that you mean it when you tell me what you think about it, you won't believe it's true that all the love you've been giving has all been meant for you. I'm looking for someone to change my life. I'm looking for a miracle in my life. And if you could see what it's done to me, lose the life I knew, but safely lead me through. Between the silence of the mountains and the crashing of the sea, there lies a land I once lived in, and she's waiting there for me. But in the gray of the morning, my mind becomes confused between the dead and the sleeping and the road that I must choose. I'm looking for someone to change my life. I'm looking for a miracle in my life. And if you could see what it's done to me, to lose the life I knew, to safely leave me to the land that I once knew, to learn as we go the secrets of your soul. It's not the way that you say it when you do those things to me. It's more the way you really mean it when you tell me what will be.
Okay, I promise that not all the songs will be written before you guys were born, at least most of you. Do you mind flipping on the lights? Let's see. This is a good stopping point for our break, so let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. And now is the time you can have cookies. So I've been saving these. So come and help yourself to cookies. They're left over from our staff meeting.
Oh.
So, well, don't all grab them at once.
Dying.
Yum. Somebody break the ice.
DYBL